Hello. Today we're going to talk about mental health awareness and intentional living. What is intentional living? A lot of us live a very intentional life. So we're always doing something that we think that is the best for us at that moment, given our experiences, given our knowledge, given our relationships at the time. In intentional living, I'm going to talk to you today about 5 things that have guided me in my life and 5 things that I actually learned in college. And the first thing is social. The second is emotional. The third is spiritual. The fourth is occupational. And then the last is intellectual. Those are the 5 things that make us who we are as humans. So let's get right to it. So, all of us, we're all social beings, right? And it's very important that we have social networks. The whole idea of the internet and the social sites like Facebook and all of the other different platforms that we have that we communicate with, it's very important. Can you imagine if we didn't have it during the time that we were all stuck at home and quarantined and such, depending on what state you are? So it just shows how important that social connection is. Even our kids, our kids who weren't able to go to school for a bit, they really missed out on the social part, the social interactions of being in a school and with other peers their age. The second thing is emotional. So emotional is the connections that we have in our life. It's who we can be vulnerable with. It is the idea of intimacy, I think, is an emotional based kind of thinking. So, for example, intimacy is not so much physical. So intimacy is actually making yourself vulnerable and being able to connect with someone on a different level, not the physical level all the time. Another thing about emotions is sometimes when we're really emotional, then we start getting into mental health diagnoses. So being emotional is a good thing, but I think everything in the extreme can be too much. So I think everything in moderation is a good thing. And that's why I was talking about these 5 different things that make who we are as humans. The third one is spiritual. This is us believing in a higher being, whether it's a spirit, whether it's a place, whether it's traditional Judeo-Christian kind of values. Spiritual is different from being religious, right? Because religion is something you do, but I think spiritual is someone who you are. It's who you are. And there was this popular German psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl, and I know a lot of y'all probably heard of him. Anyway, his plane was shot down during World War II, and he was taken in prison. And he talks about how because he had a why in his life, he was able to deal with any what. So it came to the point where he was able to have more freedom than even his guards, his prison guards. And he found ways to live despite his difficult circumstances at that time. So spiritual is very important. Now we go on to occupational. So occupational. That's a big deal right now, especially because a lot of us have lost our jobs during this COVID. A lot of us have been downsized, especially the restaurant and entertainment industry. So occupational, what job or what responsibilities do you have? Well, luckily, because we're in the 21st century, in the place that we're living at right now, there's lots of ways and there's lots of opportunities that we can have an occupation. And an occupation are the different kinds of hats, so to speak, that we wear. Like we drive people around, like our family, ourselves to work. But if we weren't doing that, guess what? We can do Uber, right? There's like so many things, so many reasons or ways to make money. Because one thing, because my parents are not from America, one thing I've learned being raised up from immigrant parents is that in America, as long as you're willing to work, there's always going to be a job for you. Otherwise, just, I guess, I hope you have good papers, because that's the only way you can have a safety net. Otherwise, you'll be pretty much fending for yourself here. So, but even with that, occupational. If you're in America, something like I heard, like even the worst people, like the homeless people here, they're even living better than people in other countries, which is interesting. So occupation, what do you occupy your time with? And remember, we have lots of them. We have lots of different responsibilities, different roles. And in doing all of those, there's also opportunities to get paid. If you're willing to mow lawns, if you're willing to do anything, there's always a job out there for someone who's willing to work and maybe get out of their comfort zone until they find something better. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is intellectual. Our intellectual self. I think one thing I've always taught my kids was the difference between learning and getting a good grade. I'm sure we all know that learning is the real aim that we're going for. Getting good grades, like for example, I got lots of good grades growing up in Los Angeles Unified School District. But when I took my ACTs and such, it was like really bad, because I got like 1,700 or something, or 1,500, pretty much just for signing my name. And then I got probably one or two answers right after that. But that just shows that I was more focused on getting good grades, and I wasn't really learning as much as I could have or should have. And in learning, it's more of a long term instead of short term. Just grades. Grades are, like, I can tell you for sure, in a lot of my places, in a lot of schools that I went to, because I was a good kid, I didn't give the teachers any problems or something, like citizenship. I was like really good. I think that's why I got good grades. It wasn't so much because what I knew, but because how I was as a person. And that can get you a long way too, like good habits, right? So I think we should always be learning. We should be constantly learning. Right now, we're in a time with e-learning, and it's just so cool because we can do so much at home. Like, I think I'm about to graduate from YouTube University. When it has to do with some of the like do-it-yourself projects here at the house, it's like my go-to. So I heard someone saying that soon here, and it's something I learned when I was, or like my teachers told me when I was in high school, at some point in American history, they're going to start making it where a high school diploma is going to be, or is not going to be worth as much. So pretty much everything is like, a high school diploma is equivalent, I guess like inflation goes, is equivalent to a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So again, it goes back to how much we learn. Because if we learn and we put that hard work towards it, you can do anything. If you have a why, then you can do anything. Because, for example, a lot of times people may not look at working as a mechanic, for example, but those trades are very important because everyone has a car, right? And every car breaks down. And so if you're able to have that skill, then you can have a job for the short term. And for the long term, if you're really good at budgeting your money and really good, have a good acumen for business, like using business loans and business credit, trade lines, stuff like that, then you can use other people's money OPM, and in trying to raise capital for your business. So there's lots of ways, but if we only think of it like working at McDonald's, for example, as, oh man, that's like so beneath me. Well, but if you have a bigger mindset, right? And you have a mindset to learn everything that you want so that you can own the franchise one day. Well, no, that's a whole different story, right? So I would encourage all of us to commit and recommit to living an intentional life, because living an intentional life, in addition to being an event, like a time that you just made up your mind and said, I'm gonna be more intentional in my living, more purposeful living, it is not just an event, but it's a way of living. So that's why we should commit and recommit ourselves all the time to do things that are best, because there's good, better, and best, right? Thank you very much for your time. And if you like this video, please subscribe, like, and I will talk to you later. Thanks.